Good morning, everybody. It is another beautiful day here at Las Conchas del Mar, and I am ready to get busy on this house build. I am. We went out and traveled over the weekend and got to spend some good refreshing time. I needed that. I was kind of getting really wore out with just here every day working on this house, and really need to see my son, spend some time with him. I love getting out and traveling. I just enjoy riding the ferries, just road tripping in my truck. So that's exactly what we did. So they got 2 days of work in. I wasn't here. So one of the things they did is that big pile of dirt that I had at the front gate. It's another truckload I had brought in. I have those things planted around here, and that's busy work. I made a video the other day about busy work. Well, there's gonna be times that maybe I need them to do something and I don't want them moving forward on some of this stuff here without me, because I want to be the one to make sure where the electrical's going, the plumbing's going, window placement, all those little things. So there's tasks that you need to have at hand that benefits the build, but that can be done without you always there. So one of the things is backfilling in here on this lot, the soil in here. We need to backfill. So that's what they worked on. Another things, we got stone out front that needs to be brought in back here to where we mix up cement, so they always know they can be bagging up and bringing in stone. And but the big task that they did, which is skilled work while we were gone, is they put up all the steel right here behind me. They got probably a good 85% of it up for the upper beams. Yeah, the floor beams, the floor girts, and that is some really good work that got done there. Mel's out feeding the chickens. Morning chicken feed time. So that is a big plus. Let me show you a little bit closer. So, yep, they have been busy getting these all put in place. And this is a cantilever beam that'll come out right here. Is the reason this steel and some other places are sticking out. And as well as on the front, there's also cantilever beams coming out. So they got a good percentage of it done. They just like one small corner here, and they wanted to make sure and verify some stuff with me on that before they continued right there. So that's probably where they'll pick up this morning most likely, and we'll continue on. I'm gonna come in here and give you a little bit more views of the steel in place in here. And this one out across this span right here, it's going to need what they call a horse put in the middle of it, and the steel right there. So there and over here, it will need a horse put in it. So there's something else I want to address about this cast form build, okay? And it's pretty important. I talk about this being, you know, typhoon proof and against crumbling, and it's sealed better, you know, insects and little creatures don't find these little cracks and crevices to get in, because when you pour the cement, it fills every void. It's more airtight, and that's nice too. But when we talk about earthquake, now I do want to address that. You don't want this whole entire structure to be a big monolithic cast. For instance, Joel asked when we were doing this, why not just buy more plywood and we form all the entire bottom walls everywhere and just start pouring it. Well, here with the seismic activity, you don't want that. You want some seismic joints, and you want some expansion joints. So You can't just go in there and do a solid pour. A solid pour on a larger structure and you have seismic activity, it's going to crack and shatter it everywhere. It has to have some place it can slip and move. Slip and move, but not fall apart. And that's a lot of the job of the steel as well. So this is why this thing is poured around in sections and stopping points. And let me give you a little example right here. Right here. So we have a doorway right here. And here is a corner column on the back of the structure. And here's a wall coming around. Okay? This wall stopped right here. Stopped right there. You can't even see the stopping point. It stopped right there. Stopped up next to this next column right here. So that puts this wall and it puts that column up to that door as one piece. Then over here, this wall and that column and the wall coming over to the next column here, that's a piece. So now there's going to be a seismic joint that can also be considered as an expansion joint right up next to a column, and over here as well right up next to a column. We just need to continue pouring here. And this reinforcement rod works the same as like a dowel as well. Then if an event happened, of course it can move right along in this joint right here. Will it mess up your plastering if an event happened? Most likely, but you can go in there and repair that. So once again, it continues down to the next column. Just on the other side of it, it stops. Comes out here, it stops. That stopping point right there for that cement, that is a stopping point where a little wall is going to come out for a restroom. You want to make those joints usually at an ending point somewhere like that. So that is what I wanted to address, that this is not just a solid, just get in there and put a whole bunch of plywood and just go pour crazy. You need to have some points that can shift. Now, some nice things about these walls versus like a hollow block wall is that these walls can support load. That's why I put such large tie beams in when we did this. Once again, they can help carry load to where a hollow block wall cannot carry load. It's just a fill. You know, it's not meant to carry any kind of load. It's just a filler. But this can, and that actually helps me out. It makes the beams, you really wouldn't have to have them as large. I'm still putting them the recommended size even if it had hollow block, but they definitely have more support underneath them. So I want to cover these things, and there's many other things that'll come along as we're doing this that will also have to do with that. The same on the floor. Didn't just go in there and pour solid slab. I have the steel in place for the floor all the way around, and it's embedded into that tie beam. And we'll come in here and pour this room by room, and that will allow for more shifting if there was an event, shifting without major cracking and crumbling. That's what we're looking for. Maybe it shifts and it can shift back. The steel holds it in place, but the concrete doesn't just crumble to a jillion pieces because it was too rigid. You do not want it to become too rigid. Now on small structures, say like this outdoor restroom, CR as they call it, those size structures, yeah, you could solid cast that without a problem. You can solid cast that without having to have all those things. Smaller structures, you can. That septic we put down in the ground, that can be solid cast as it is. That's not a problem. But when you start getting into larger, longer walls and multiple columns and all these complexities, you need to start having these points that it can shift. So what you can also do, when there's, I'm sure I could have probably searched it out, they've got metal expansion joints that you can put in place on the end of that concrete where it terminates. There's different methods for doing that, but if you want to take this on, you do your own homework, and you you search out those methods. So I'll tell you this. This structure is not so huge that it has to be super complex on all those joints, but it's not so small that I can just throw all caution to the wind and not put them, okay? So I am putting seismic joints and expansion joints in. That was planned out throughout this. All right, so that's my morning little yak, and I'm gonna go get busy. It's about 30 minutes, 40 minutes before the crew gets here, and I just want to jump in there, start handling some things before they're here. All right, I'm having to do a little mapping out here. So when you come in this front gate right here, there's going to be a set of stairs start right there, and they're going to come up, and there's going to be a landing, and then they're going to turn to the left and go up, and they're going to go up to the front door up above up there. And I'm having to make a little bit of adjustments on my house plan as well. Let me show you something here. So this is straight down the street right here. And as this neighborhood fills up, everybody that drives down the street is dead on with my gates right here, dead on with the center of the front of my house. So as this development continues to grow, everybody that turns down this long street, what they're going to see at the end is our house right here. And for the sake of our investment, we want to have it, you know, pretty nice, that nice curb appeal to the front. Well, when I did my plans, we had the front door up there facing this street, but you got to deal with the real world, and the real world, that's not going to work. This is a typhoon country. There's a lot of storms pass through, not just typhoons, all kinds of tropical storms. I noticed during that time the wind is coming primarily from that direction right down through there. That would put all that water and wind blowing directly on my front door, and we're not talking about mild wind, we're talking about strong wind. So that ain't gonna work, but I'm gonna put the door over to the side here now instead of in the front here. And those are adjustments you got to make when it comes to the real world. So to compensate for that, I'm going to add more glass in the front right there, and that'll also block the wind there in that area. It was going to be an open little like patio terrace right there. I'm just going to go ahead and glass it in. They give you some protection there at your front door. It lets me put the door over to the side. It's the only way I can put the door to the side is by closing in and glassing in that little front terrace, that front little overhanging place out there. So little changes you got to make. So of course I've got to add in on the budget for a little bit of glass work to be done there in that front to close that in. I think it'll be pretty nice too. Be a nice dry place to come into. If you've got wet, you know, jacket, umbrellas or anything like that, it's a place that you can put them. We can put some plants and things in there as well. So I think it's going to be a wonderful adjustment. So here on the back, there's some cantilever beams that are going to come out right here, and there's going to be 3 of them, and there's a spiral staircase, if we stick with the spiral shape, down here at the end. Well, I didn't want just a big square or rectangular blocky cantilever beam sticking out there. So I went over with Joel a plan that I had. Let me show you. So I'm telling Joel, we use a little picture sometimes so we make sure I understand it. I didn't want it to just come out rectangular at the end. That I wanted to taper this up and make it smaller and have those beams exposed and give it that nice shape like that. And I just give him a rough drawing there how I wanted it, and just take these bottom steels and bring them up, tie them all in. So let me show you what he pulled out of the pile over here. So Joel walks over there to the scrap pile, grabs the scrap of plywood, and he had a picture on it. And he had already done this himself prior to me ever even mentioning to him this design for those beams in the back. He had the exact same thought in mind. Yeah, The exact same thought. In fact, he's laying it out, his stirrups here now, shrinking it in, getting it smaller. So that'll be the first size of the beam coming right off the column, and that cantilever beam, this will be the size of it out at the tip out there, reducing it down with each ring getting a different dimension. So he had his game on already. Exactly what I was wanting, and he didn't even know that I was wanting that. He had the same thoughts in his mind, and that's pretty cool. I like it when it works out like that. So now there's something else that I want to cover with you guys that we've encountered. Just be forthcoming about it, and that's with this plywood, reusing it each time. It's went well. We've had at this point, whack my head on some bamboo there. It's went well at about this point. We've got about 4 pours on each sheet, and it's all went well, except we had just a couple places that started trying to stick. So on this last wall that we poured, it tried to stick right here, and it peeled the finish off as we pulled the sheet loose. Only right here at this very top. The rest of it all still came out slick. So and it was only this one sheet that did it. None of the other sheets did it. But I decided that it's time that we try to clean these better. When we started out on this project, we were giving them our full attention, and then you kind of get lax as it goes on, and that happens. I'm guilty of it. I'm sure other people are guilty too. Well, they had cleaned these, but they really weren't cleaned that well, and there was cement residue staying on there, and of course then the new cement was bonding to it. And I said, we've got to clean them better. There's got to be a better way, because I can still see a lot of residue. Let me see that for a second, Miller. So I thought maybe if we tried this stainless steel scrubber that Melinda uses on her pans, it won't take off the finish. You don't want to use a wire brush or nothing like that. And these things are pretty good little old pads. Here in the Philippines they call it steel wool, but in the US this is not what we call steel wool. But this is a curled up like stainless steel wire, and these work really great. We took dish soap, and Millie, you think it's doing a whole lot better job? Is it doing a better job now? Yeah, it's actually removing that residue. So I think these are going to be, will be okay for our next pour. We're going to give it a try and see how that goes. Now, some of you mentioned about putting oil and putting cooking oil and motor oil and all these different agents on there. Well, there's not necessarily those releasing agents always readily available here where I'm at. I'm out in a province area out in the middle of the Philippines. We don't always have all these different little chemicals and agents and stuff available. The next thing on this plywood, I don't want to put a motor oil or a diesel, because I don't know how it'll affect that polyfilm on there. It could have an adverse effect on it and actually cause it to release or swell and come off the wood, and I darn sure don't want that to happen. I might be a little bit more game to try the cooking oil, a little bit more game. We'll see, but definitely not motor oil, definitely not diesel this time on this plywood like this. And I'm also concerned of leaving any kind of oil residue on the cement on the outside where we've got to come back and skim coat, because what if it causes it to not adhere well and affect me on my finishing on the inside down the road. So I got to look at that also. But I think we'll be all right. It's cleaning up pretty good, and if that's the worst of it, like it did right there, that still skim coats out just fine. It's not the end of the world. That little bit of peeling it did is minor. I mean, actually that would float right out with that skim coat without a problem at all. So the bottom part of this build of pouring the concrete around the base, it's almost done. There's not much left to do down there, just a few more little pours, and we are up to all of the floor beams, the floor girts, the cantilever beams sticking out, we are going to be down to where it gets more complex than what we've been doing down below so far. And it's kind of great because what we did down below gave everybody a chance on some basic work to understand what's happening. So now they've got a really good grasp of it, they really do. And so now as we move up to where the structure does get more complex, where there is more happening, I've got a crew of guys here with me that understand what's going on, and it's going to make that work go a whole lot smoother. And I'm looking forward to that. So we're really having to do our due diligence now, going to the plans and mapping this thing out perfect. I spent all the early part of this morning going over those plans, refreshing my mind, just plans. Late last night, I've got those plans rolled out. I'm just soaking in, making sure that I have my mind completely embedded into that, because I do not need any mistakes. So that's what's been happening there with all that, and it's about to step up and really be going on.